I always thought Jake and I were the perfect couple. We met at university, stayed together through graduation, and had been living together for 2 years. Jake was charming, funny, and practical, the kind of man who never made impulsive decisions. Or so I thought. One rainy afternoon, I came home early from work. I wasn't supposed to. A meeting was canceled last minute, and I decided to surprise Jake with his favorite takeout. As I pushed open the door, I heard the faint sound of paper rustling from the bedroom. Curious, I tiptoed quietly, a playful grin on my face, expecting to catch him maybe reading or folding laundry. But what I saw stopped me cold. Jake was sitting on the floor, back to the bed, with stacks of money spread out around him. Neatly wrapped bundles of cash, more money than I had ever seen in real life. He was so focused, he didn't hear me. My heart raced. Where had he gotten that money? Why was he hiding it? I cleared my throat, and Jake nearly jumped out of his skin. "Babe, you scared me," he said, laughing nervously as he scrambled to gather the bills. "I was just organizing some savings." "Jake, what is all this?" "This isn't just savings," I said, my voice trembling. He hesitated. "It's just, I've been planning something, a surprise maybe." But his eyes darted away, and I knew something was off. That night, as we sat on the couch, I pressed him gently. He avoided the subject, brushing it off with jokes and kisses. But my mind wouldn't rest. Where had this money come from? And what was he planning? Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own home. I noticed how Jake was unusually quiet, his phone always in his hand, his texts turning secretive. He made vague comments about change and starting fresh. But what shook me the most was what I found in his desk drawer, a one-way ticket to Costa Rica, booked under his name, leaving in 2 months. My chest tightened. Costa Rica? Without me? When I confronted him, Jake's face went pale. "It's complicated," he murmured. Complicated. Our life together was supposed to be simple. We were supposed to build a future, get married, have kids, maybe buy a house. But now, all I saw were questions with no answers. That night, as Jake slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, sleepless. Was he planning to run away with me, or without me? One thing was clear. Everything I thought I knew about Jake was starting to fall apart, and I had no idea what I would uncover next. The morning after I found the plane ticket, everything felt surreal. Jake was cheerful, making coffee and humming a tune, as if our lives hadn't just tilted off their axis. I watched him carefully, trying to read the subtle shifts in his expression, his body language. Was this the same man I had trusted with my dreams? At breakfast, I finally spoke. "Jake, why Costa Rica?" I asked casually, as if I didn't already know about the ticket. He froze for a split second before smiling. "I read an article about it. Beaches, rainforests. Thought maybe we could go sometime." I nodded slowly, heart pounding. So he was already spinning the story. Over the next few days, the distance between us grew. Jake came home later than usual, mumbling excuses about work and errands. He became guarded with his phone, even taking it into the shower. One evening, I decided to follow him. I felt sick with guilt, but I had to know. Jake wasn't just meeting coworkers or running errands. He was meeting a man I didn't recognize. They spoke in hushed tones outside a cafe, Jake occasionally glancing over his shoulder. I watched from a distance, my mind racing with theories. When Jake got home, I confronted him. "Who was that man you were with today?" I asked calmly. His face drained of color. "Just someone helping me with some investments," he said too quickly. Investments? Jake had never cared about stocks or business deals before. That night, I barely slept. My mind was a storm of doubt, suspicion, and sadness. How long had he been keeping secrets? How much of our life was real? The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. While Jake was in the shower, I searched his backpack. Inside, I found a leather folder stuffed with papers, bank statements, withdrawal slips, and something that made my heart drop. A document titled Property Lease, San Jose, Costa Rica. His name was on it. Mine was not. I sat on the edge of the bed, folder in hand, when Jake came out of the bathroom. His face twisted when he saw me with the papers. "Were you planning to tell me?" I asked quietly. Jake ran a hand through his wet hair, pacing the room. "I was going to. I needed to figure things out first." "Figure what out, Jake? Whether you were leaving with me or without me?" My voice cracked. He sank onto the bed, head in his hands. "It's not what you think." But it was, wasn't it? I realized then that the man I had loved was no longer the man sitting beside me. He was someone I no longer understood. And for the first time in our relationship, I wondered if love was enough to save us. The silence between Jake and me became unbearable. Days passed where we barely spoke, both of us pretending that things were normal when they were anything but. The tension was thick. I could feel it in every glance, every forced smile, every quiet meal. Finally, one evening, Jake broke. "We need to talk," he said softly, sitting across from me at the dining table. His eyes were tired, the weight of his secret pressing down on him. I folded my arms, bracing myself. "Then talk." He took a deep breath. "I didn't plan for it to happen like this. The inheritance, it was sudden, overwhelming. I felt trapped. Everyone had expectations. My family, my coworkers, you." I stared at him. "Expectations? Jake, all I wanted was you. Not your money, not your inheritance, just the man I fell in love with." Jake ran his fingers through his hair, a habit when he was nervous. "I know. But the money changed things. It changed me." There it was, the confession I had dreaded. He continued, voice trembling. "At first, I thought we'd use the money to build a life together. A house, travel, maybe start something of our own. But the more I thought about it, the more suffocated I felt. I wondered, am I with you because I want to be, or because it's what's expected?" My chest tightened. "So you plan to leave?" Jake shook his head quickly. "I considered it. I panicked. But I never stopped loving you." Tears welled up in my eyes. "You were ready to run, Jake. With or without me." He reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine. I was scared, and I messed up. For the first time, I saw the vulnerability in him. Not the man overwhelmed by money, but the man overwhelmed by his own fear of losing control, of being swallowed by expectations. We sat in silence, the air between us heavy with what was unsaid. I thought of all the small moments, the late-night talks, the quiet mornings, the promises we'd made. Were they all just illusions? Or was there still something real left to save? Jake finally whispered, "I don't want to lose you, but I need to figure out who I am." And in that moment, I realized something. Maybe I needed to figure out who I was too. The next morning, the sun filtered softly through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room. Jake was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. Without a word, I sat beside him. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "It was my uncle, Uncle Martin. You never met him. He lived alone most of his life. no wife, no kids. He always told me I reminded him of himself when he was young. When he passed away last month, I inherited everything. I reached for his hand, listening. Jake continued, "It wasn't just money. It was his house, his investments, even his old watch collection. Suddenly, I went from living paycheck to paycheck to being someone else." He gave a sad laugh, and I didn't know how to handle it. There was a long pause. The weight of his words hung in the air. I finally asked, "And now? What do you want to do?" He turned to me, eyes clear for the first time in weeks. "I want to stay, but not as the man panicking over money or running from you. I want to learn how to be better, for myself and for us." Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. "I want that too, Jake. But I need to trust you again. We can't go back to pretending." Jake nodded slowly. "I know. It's not going to be easy." We spent the day talking, really talking. About our fears, about our dreams, about where we lost ourselves in the chaos. For the first time in a long while, we weren't just partners navigating a storm. We were two people, trying to rebuild something fragile, but still alive. As evening fell, Jake made a quiet decision. "I'm putting part of the inheritance into a trust, for charity, for family, for later. I don't want it to define me, or us." And just like that, the weight began to lift. In the days that followed, we worked slowly toward healing. There were no grand gestures, no overnight fixes, just small, steady steps, rebuilding trust, laughter, late-night talks, quiet, mornings once more. In the end, Jake didn't have to run, and neither did I. We chose to stay, together.